Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Saza, for that very kind introduction. Excellency Prime Minister Imran Khan, the Honorable Chief Justice Saqib Nisar Sahab, Prime Minister Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Honorable Chief Ministers, Federal and Provincial Ministers, eminent judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts, the eminent scholars and media representatives, ambassadors and eminent citizens. It's a privilege for me to be invited by the Honorable Chief Justice to inflict some thoughts on you on this subject. I believe that this is truly a milestone, a day that will be recorded in history. Meetings, there is no shortage of meetings, but truly the synthesis between two of the most important state institutions, the judiciary at the highest level and the executive representing also the legislature at the highest level, is unprecedented. The very presence of the chief executive of the country and his previous engagements at the CCI level reflect an authenticity of commitment that is refreshing to witness. I was enlightened by all the preceding speakers and invigorated by the range of observations that they made. Some of the data may have been familiar to some of us or all of us, but all the other reflections and the pieces of advice were truly enlightening and motivating. One's own subject is national narrative, advocacy for a family planning campaign in Pakistan. And it is sobering to remember that this is not going to be the first. It was, as was well said earlier by Dr. Sania Nishtar, back in the 1960s. He may not have been a politically elected head of state, but credit should be given to President Ayub Khan for making Pakistan virtually the first country in Asia to recognize the importance of this issue. So what has happened since then? 50 years have gone by, 55 years almost. Why have we lost track of that narrative? Was there something wrong with the narrative? Was there something wrong with the implementation? And all the while, all other major Muslim dominant countries have pulled far ahead of Pakistan. And the irony is Pakistan is the only one of 57 member states of the Organization of the Islamic Conference to be a nuclear weapon power. This country has a capacity to understand significance and the capacity to achieve it. But in this most profoundly affecting dimension, what has gone wrong? ये moment को कैसे हल करें? ये क्या mystery है? Something so evident, staring us in the face, and we have been able to keep pace at least with our Muslim majority countries. I wish some of the data, excellent data showed, should also have included countries like Turkey and Iran, which is exemplary. And with no disrespect to Iran, in Iran we have the instance of a republic that could be called led by a theocracy, because an unelected alim at the highest level may veto the will of the people. And yet Iran is further ahead than Indonesia or Bangladesh in the use of contraceptives and the recognition of this issue. Great mystery. I come forth with some humble observations, and only to say that this comes about from about 5 decades of experience of work at the grassroots level. When one says 5 decades, it gives you age, but as you know, no woman is over 30, no man is over 40. I'm still about 29. But 5 decades of work at the grassroots level, in development, in parliament, thrice by mistake in the cabinet, but also in media and in advocacy. And do I really have the answers? I don't think so. I'm only going to attempt defining how do we go about formulating a new national narrative. Well, firstly, I think there have to be 5 dimensions to this. And the first dimension has to be credibility of content. कि मतन जो आप पेश करें कौमी बयाने में वो ऐसा मतन हो कि वो हजम भी हो सके और जिसको सब अपनाएं, क्रेडिबिलिटी हो। ये नहीं उसका अंदाज होना चाहिए कि ये मुसल्लत किया जा रहा है कि वफाकी हुकूमत और चारों सूबाई हुकूमतों ने मिलकर कह दिया है कि भाई जी अवाम को ये सिखाओ, अवाम को बोलो। लफ्ज कंट्रोल से तो मुकम्मल परहेज। देयर मस्ट बी नो यूज ऑफ द वर्ड कंट्रोल। इट्स फार टू coercive, it's intimidating, it's intrusive into the very sacred privacy of family life. We have no business telling people whether they should have 1 or 2 or 3. And we should never impose, let it come out of their own informed, as the Maulana Sahib so well said, based on knowledge and understanding. And we need to use much more vigorously in this credibility of content than we ever have. Actual couples, an Indonesian couple, an Iranian couple, a Turkish couple, a Bangladeshi couple, give their names, show the people of Pakistan that we are not the ones trying to thrust family planning down your throats. This is what the rest of your Muslim brethren have done. People who you meet during Hajj and Umrah, they have pulled ahead of you. Illustrated. And if we go to the second, after we agree that it should be a participative content, people should identify with it immediately. The second has to be unanimity. Now, easier said than done. Unanimity? Unanimity in a country that is so beautifully diverse and plural in every respect. We may be 97% Muslim, but my God, if you visit a Baldia colony in Karachi, the dialect changes every 50 to 100 yards. The music of our languages and the plurality of our lifestyles. Can there be unanimity? Unanimity, you think we have the capacity? Well, the good news is that this diverse nation, squabbling with each other all the time, has shown remarkable capacity for unanimity. The 1973 Constitution, the war against terror, the 18th Amendment, all forces came together with popular support. But at the same time, we have to be realistic. In this present phase of our country's life, we have a robustly adversarial democracy, which we have just borrowed from Westminster as if you can't touch it, as if it's a sacred scroll. And it promotes acrimony, partisanship, schisms. And look at the schisms in America, in India, in Britain. Are we obliged to just replicate this? And can we have unanimity when we are tearing each other apart evening and every morning? And we also have great diversities in our cultural lifestyles, urban, rural. We have diversity between provinces, and we have diversity within provinces, ethnic as well as demographic. We have diversity of income groups, we have educational diversity, we have apartheid, we have consensus of a kind amongst religious leaders, so marvelously expressed by Maulana Tariq Jamil, earlier this morning by Maulana Allama Shehzad Mujahidi, and earlier when we were working for a consensus in 2013 to 2015, we had Maulana Abul Kabir Azad, the Khatib of Badshahi Mosque, who joined others and who is present today. So we have had the ability to religious leaders together, and yet, with great respect, there is lack of unanimity amongst the segment of religious leadership. There is very clearly a need to extend and to expand the consensus that we have achieved in the past 5 years. It is really a micro consensus. It has to become a macro consensus, and it has to go to the grassroots. Meetings like this need to be held in every district, virtually in every taluka. It has to move from being a passive consensus to a proactive consensus. The third, the national narrative has to have singularity, a singularity of concept, a singularity of expression, and not different terms being used in different provinces. Because singularity alone will ensure clarity, will enable people to absorb what is being said wholly and not with a dose of confusion. There are going to be multiple supplementary messages within that singularity, depending on which target group you want to meet, which target group you want to reach and persuade, whether it is a deputy secretary in a provincial government who has to take a crucial decision, has to be thinking on the same lines as a legislator who has stood up and made a great speech in Parliament. And if we have singularity, along with multiple supplements supporting it. Fourth, we must have consistency. Consistency over time, over months, over years, across departments. The Ministry of Finance should be as vigorously involved as the Ministry of Population Welfare or National Health Services. This consistency is not just a matter of allotting money, as has well happened in the past. Good budgets have been allotted, but that's not real consistency. Consistency comes from passion, the kind that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was able to inspire in Bangladesh. The fact that every single government in Bangladesh, caretaker, military-led, democratic, BNP, Awami League, never wavered. That is the kind of consistency we need. Fifth, and the last of these five, a new national narrative has to be rooted in reality. हकीकत के करीब, ये नहीं कि हम बयाना बनाए जा रहे हैं, बड़ी अच्छी बातें कर रहे हैं, आइडियल बातें कर रहे हैं, और जमीन पर हकायक कुछ और. As was well said, population welfare center जाएं तो डॉक्टर हो, सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हो, और न सिर्फ वहां बल्कि सिविल अस्पताल जाएं तो वहां भी हो. ये नहीं कि बयानिया कहीं जा रहा है और हकीकत कहीं और जा रही है. So a need to coordinate with the quality of service providers and a carefully calibrated coordination between promoting the national narrative and the extension of services. I come now, Chief Justice and Prime Minister, to the second and last part, which is the role of media. We think we have to use media. I've only studied media for only 50 years, and the more I study media, the more skeptical I grow about media. But let me say that we need to divide that into three phases. Apart from nature's media, ideal media, a flower is a medium, a river is a medium, they're all conveying information to us. And I wish we could live forever with nature's media. But alas, we have to deal with human-made media. And mainstream media, you know, television, radio, blah, blah, blah. Digital media, social media, have now become mobile media. For the first time in human history, all media are now in the palm of one's hand. But, in my humble view, word of mouth is the single most powerful medium of communication. A message revealed 1400 years ago was certainly written down as the revelation of the Holy Quran. But we have never seen a picture of the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, in order to look upon him as the greatest human being who ever lived. It's just word of mouth. So, the moment you say Rasul-e-Pak, look at the instillation of profound respect and understanding that goes through one's veins. Word of mouth. And then supplemented by interpersonal communication between the service provider and the married couple who wants family planning. In many respects, mainstream Pakistani media have rendered a very informative, educative role over the years. However, with respect, I believe that today TV news channels in particular, which unfortunately attract a disproportionate volume of attention from policymakers, decision makers. I'm so alarmed if I visit someone who is very highly placed. There's a television set on in the office all the time, if he's not already on Twitter. The age of distraction and diversion is diminishing the capacity of leadership to think clearly and to focus precisely. And therefore I say to mass media, especially news channels, and I would urge the Honorable Chief Justice to take notice of this fact, the way he has so marvelously taken notice of water. We waste 70% of our water, as you know. In real terms, there's no water shortage, but because we waste it, we also waste 70% of precious media time. Every evening from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., instead of focusing on core issues such as what population is going to do to this country, we have he said, she said, or do you think he said, she said, and a little combat that lasts, and that is repetitive, similar. Every channel is doing the same. This is a colossal waste of precious media time that should be used to promote the new narrative. In social media, we have a great number of very gifted young as well as not so young Pakistani information technologists. They have developed extremely innovative packages. And as Dr. Nishtar said, we need to tap this resource and use it. And in interpersonal communication as well, we need to build the capacity to articulate effectively. Merely having a lady health worker is not good enough. Even if she's a good health specialist, it doesn't make her a good communicator, because a communicator needs to listen to everyone else. So, let me conclude by saying there are perhaps 7 or 8, depends on how you count it, 8 elements that should constitute national narrative. How we can condense it and reduce it is a matter of great challenge. 1, the urgency, the emergency. The national narrative must communicate that. We have no time to lose, not a second. Number 2, ensuring balance in family size. That's a given. 3rd, primacy of birth spacing, maternal and infant health. 4th, optimizing easy access to services. 5th, qualitative universal primary education. 6th, establish a link between balanced growth and higher per capita income, which is the antithesis of what the very poor families think, that by having more children, they are ensuring higher income, whereas the opposite is true. So, creating the rationale and conveying the information. And 7th, portrayal of couples from other major Muslim countries. And the last, the larger majority of Pakistani males still believe that it is the woman's duty to provide a son. They need to be informed, as science has proven, that the woman plays no role whatsoever in determining the gender of the child. And therefore, girls who've been beaten, divorced, killed, have acid thrown on them for seas for not producing a son, that colossal ignorance still exists today. And we have not removed it in its entirety. So perhaps the future will be comprised of citizen advocacy and not be dependent unduly on TV news channels or radio. Of course, they should be engaged, but we need to motivate every citizen of Pakistan to project national narrative. Thank you, sir.